$1 billion number, they usually say it in a way that makes it sound simple. Like Cloud Imperium got handed $1 billion up front, burned it on one unfinished game, and that is the whole story. But that is not actually what happened. And if you want to understand Star Citizen's finances in a serious way, you have to start with one basic correction. This was never one game, one team, one office, one budget, or one moment where somebody just wired them $1 billion. It was a company built over time. 2 games, a global studio footprint, a live service platform, and always running alpha, a cinematic single-player campaign with major actors, and years of spending that scaled as the company scaled. That is a part of a lot of people miss, because the real story is not they had $1 billion. The real story is how they grew into the kind of company that could even spend at that level in the first place. And the official numbers back that up. CIG's own 2012 to 2017 financial report shows that did this not begin as $1 billion monster. In 2012, total pledges and income were about $7.3 million. Total cost, capex, was about $1.1 million, and the company ended that year with just 13 employees. By 2013, total income was about $29.4 million. By 2014, it was about $37.6 million. By 2015, $44.6 million. By 2016, $44.9 million. By 2017, $43.8 million. End of year headcount climbed from 13 in 2012 to 58 in 2013, 179 in 2014, 263 in 2015, 369 in 2016, and 464 in 2017. That is not a studio sitting on $1 billion war chest. That is a company ramping year by year into a much bigger operation. And right there is the first big myth to kill. They did not start big, they became big. The second myth is that this money was always for one product. It wasn't. CIG's own corporate site says it is developing Star Citizen Squadron 42. And if you go all the way back to the campaign goals, Squadron 42 was baked into the pitch from the start. Early stretch goals increased the campaign from 30 missions to 35, then 45, then 50. At 5 million, CIG promised celebrity voice acting for Squadron 42. At 10 million, it promised its own mocap studio. At 6 million, it promised a full orchestral score. This was never just build an online sandbox and call it a day. It included a big cinematic, single-player campaign from the jump. And that matters because once you understand that there are really 2 major products here, the budget conversation immediately changes. Star Citizen is not just a game in development. It is also a live alpha that CIG publishes, supports, patches, hosts, markets, and operates continuously. Squadron 42 is not just some side mode. It is a cinematic single-player campaign that CIG itself describes as a Hollywood caliber experience. And its official cast list includes names like Gary Oldman, Mark Hamill, Gillian Anderson, Andy Serkis, Liam Cunningham, John Rhys Davis, Mark Strong, Sophie Wu, and Ben Mendelsohn. That kind of production is not free. And even without knowing the private contracts, the company's own reports still show that contracted development costs include things like head scanning, shot and motion capture, music composition, and orchestration. Now I want to be careful here. I will not make a video claiming you know exactly what Gary Oldman or Mark Hamill got paid because those contracts are not public. That would be fake precision. The honest version is this. Union rate sheets give you a floor, not a realistic celebrity quote. SAG-AFTRA's interactive media rate materials show day performer game rates in the hundreds to low thousands of dollars per session before overtime and before any start premium, which is useful only as proof that performance, capture, and game acting are real cost centers, not as a way to reverse engineer an A-list contract. So if you are setting the record straight, say this: the exact actor contract aren't public, but the cost category is obviously real. And CIG's own reporting still includes motion capture, scanning, and orchestral work and continuous spend. That is the honest version. Now, let's talk timeline because this is where they raised $1 billion. Conversation becomes much more useful. CIG's own financial reports show the company's annual income climbing step by step. In 2018, total income was about $48.9 million. In 2019, $60.7 million. In 2020, pledges were $77 million. Subscriptions, $4.7 million. And other income, $6.5 million. In 2021, sales were $86 million. Subscriptions, $5 million. And other income, $9.4 million. In 2022, sales were $114 million. Subscriptions, $5.3 million. And other income, $11.4 million. In 2023, total income reached $143 million, made up of $119 million in sales, $6.5 million in subscriptions, and $17.1 million in other income. That is the roadmap. Not one pile of cash, a long climb. And the cost side climbed with it. In 2020, CIG cost rose to $74.8 million, with $6.1 million in capex. In 2021, cost rose to $98.5 million, with $2 million in capex. In 2022, costs including capex rose another 29%, with capex alone at $12.9 million. In 2023, total costs including capex hits $163 million, and CIG said that meant about $20 million loss after capex for the year on its simple reporting basis. That is the third myth to kill. The money did not just sit there. The company kept scaling to meet the scope it had committed to. And what did that scaling actually look like? Headcount is the easiest place to start. CIG reported 604 employees at the end of 2019, 695 at the end of 2020, 748 at the end of 2021, 860 at the end of 2022, and 1,085 at the end of 2023. In 2023 alone, headcount rose by 225, helped by the Turbulent acquisition, which added about 198 people. By the end of 2023, CIG said the rest of the world side of the company represented 80% of global headcount, including Montreal. And that global shift matters because CIG's own 2012-2017 report says one of its big structural choices was growing outside the US in lower cost territories. By 2015, rest of world development headcount has surpassed US development headcount, and by the end of 2017, it represented about 3/4 of development personnel. In other words, CIG was already trying to manage costs by moving more development work in the UK and Europe years ago. So when people say, well, just look at US AAA salaries, that is not wrong as a general industry point, but it is incomplete for CIG specifically. The better read is this. Labor is the main cost, and CIG structurally tried to reduce average labor costs by leaning more heavily into the UK and later Montreal and Germany instead of keeping all development concentrated in the US. That is a much smarter financial read and just slapping California salary assumptions across the whole company. The next big cost bucket is infrastructure and offices. CIG's 2021 announcement for Manchester said the company had more than 700 employees worldwide, about 400 of them in the UK at the time, and that Manchester will become its biggest office yet. In 2021, it also signed a 10-year lease for around 3,000 square meters in Frankfurt. By 2023 financial report, CIG said overhead costs rose to $33.1 million, and specifically called out the Turbulent acquisition and office growth, about 13,000 square feet added in Montreal, over 30,000 square feet of improved office facilities in Frankfurt, and an additional 35,000 square foot floor in Manchester. So again, this is not just game dev salaries. This is rent, build out, IT, travel, security, hardware renewals, furniture, maintenance, inner office collaboration, all the boring, expensive things people forget about when they talk about game budget. And CIG spells that out itself. In 2022, it said overhead in that category rose to $18.4 million, and in 2023, it rose to $33.1 million. It also reported capex of $12.9 million in 2022 and $7 million in 2023 for hardware, software, fixtures, fittings, office build-outs, server upgrades, and infrastructure purchases. Then there is publishing and operations. A lot of people forget that Star Citizen is not sitting in a vault waiting for launch. It is already being run like a live product in a lot of ways. CIG's own reports say The publishing community events marketing bucket includes online services, customer support, the RSI platform, publishing, data hosting, server costs, sales, collection, customer liaison, and events. That cost line was $9 million in 2018, $11.4 million in 2019, $25.4 million in 2021, $29.9 million in 2022, and $39.7 million in 2023. So if somebody says, how can it cost that much if the game isn't out? Part of the answer is because one of the two products is already operating like a massive live pre-release service. Service costs money. Support costs money. Payments and platform costs money. Community ops costs money. Citizen con costs money. And CIG itself explicitly says that category includes server and data hosting costs. There's also tech and engine spend. CIG officially moved Star Citizen Squadron 42 to Amazon Lumberyard in 2016 and said the attraction was its deep AWS integration. Then in 2020, CIG said CapEx was unusually high partially because it bought a perpetual CryEngine license, strengthening its long-term position with the technology stack. That matters because this is not a team paying Unity fees and shipping a normal multiplayer game. They have spent years building custom tech on top of an engine, Leanish, that started with CryEngine, moved through Lumberjack, and is now heavily branded as Star Engine in their own messaging. Whether people love that decision or hate it, it is clearly not a cheap route. And finally, there is outside capital. Another myth is that every dollar came only from the pledge counter. Not true. CIG reports break income into sales, subscription, and other income. And Chris Roberts also announced a $46 million minority investment in 2018 for roughly 10% of the US and UK companies. In 2019, CIG said those investors exercised an option to add another $17.25 million. So even the crowdfunded forever narrative needs to one correction. The company also used outside investment to support long-term growth and future marketing. So if I were setting the record straight in one sentence, I will say this. The billion-dollar conversation only makes sense if you understand that the money arrived over 13 years, funded 2 games instead of 1, built a company that scaled from 13 people to more than 1,000, and paid not just for developers, but for offices, publishing, servers, platform operations, contractors, motion capture, orchestral work, actors, engine licensing, and a live alpha that never really stopped running. That is the adult version of the story. Not the mean version, not the fanboy version, not the hater version, the adult version. And that does not automatically mean every delay is justified. It does not automatically mean every decision was smart. It does not automatically mean the project is efficient. But it does mean the cheap line, they had $1 billion for one unfinished game, is financially lazy. Because that is not what the official record actually shows.